Welcome back, everyone. Time for some more Dark Souls 3. We're back in the Cathedral of the Deep. It's been a little while since we've been on this character, for a variety of reasons, but I think it's time once more to start up our journey. Make sure that we've got the right spells attuned here. Fire will remain a very helpful elemental attribute throughout our stay here, so we want to have plenty of fire spells equipped. We need to get back up to the roof where we were last time, and to do so, the quickest way is actually to take the shortcut we unlocked the last time. That means we have to go down first, and then take this fairly ridiculously long ladder. We're wearing the Bandit set today. It's a set of... It's on the heavier side of light armor, but it's still very much light armor, but it offers fairly good protection. Looks pretty nice, too. I like the gold cufflinks. Grave Wardens have a lot of interesting moves up their sleeves, like that fireball spit. It can take you off guard pretty easily if you're not paying attention. You would think that they mostly would just attack with their twin blades, but they have a couple of hidden talents as well. Fairly dangerous enemies, all told. If at all possible, you really want to take out that guy up in the window. He has a very good line of fire on you all throughout your adventuring on these very unstable rooftops. So getting rid of that complication before it becomes a problem can really make this easier. This is a fairly difficult area. Not the least of which because of all these ambushes from thralls. I would say that the thralls with flamberges are actually less dangerous than the ones with the axes. They do a lot of damage if they hit you, but as was demonstrated, they're very slow. A thing to note about that encounter is that while it looks overwhelming, the thing to note is that none of the enemies there are actually very aggressive. There's 3 crossbow hollows and 1 spear-wielding hollow, both of which are simply not exceptionally aggressive. So you actually have plenty of time to get in and eliminate the crossbow hollows while they're reloading, and there's a good chance that the one wielding the spear will simply hide behind his shield until you're ready to deal with him. Oh, what a fantastic prize. Definitely worth dying for. Dealing with an evangelist in such a narrow space can be very difficult. You'll also notice that I've been afflicted with a debuff here. Some of the hollows in this area are capable of attacking you with undead hunter charms, which will block any and all Estus healing during the duration. Not just health regeneration either. I can't use my Ashen Flask to restore my focus points while I'm under the effects of it. I believe that you could still heal with an ember while under the effects of that, but that's sort of a desperation move and not always applicable. I tend to get screwed up by these guys a little bit. Despite the fact that they're wearing nothing but robes, the larger hollows with the heavy weapons actually have quite a bit of poise to get through. So even a full fire orb to the face didn't interrupt that attack, and I ended up taking some damage from that when I didn't expect it. So many thralls at once is a bit of a tall order, especially since my shield is not actually good at the whole defense thing. One strategy for dealing with them is to simply get some distance and bait them into doing their blow dart attack, which is not very damaging and easy enough to avoid. So you can quickly close the distance and take care of them before they switch to their more dangerous melee weapons. Of course there's more. There's always more. Well, I hope he didn't drop anything. Always more. I've been taking quite a bit of damage throughout this little trek, so I'm going to try to have my divine shield out as much as I can so I can regenerate a little bit of that lost HP. I'm already fairly low on flasks, so it would pay to be frugal. This little area up here doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose except as a place for thralls to hide, and maybe a sniper spot if you're so inclined. In Dark Souls 3, mage-type characters tend to focus more on mid-range combat, so it's not really useful unless you're using a bow of some description. This area can be quite nasty if you just dash in without thinking about it. There are actually 2 Grave Wardens here. One of them, actually I believe they're both patrolling around at different set routes. So if you have bad timing, you might just find yourself in a situation where both of them attack you at once. One-on-one, they're reasonably easy to deal with, but 2 at a time can actually be really dangerous, especially at this point in the game. That's when you want to have an actually strong shield. We start running into more of those self-immolating hollows, though they are honestly very non-threatening. They are one of the few enemies in the game where simply running away from them for a certain period of time will solve the problem by itself. They can also be interrupted out of their immolation animation just by a normal attack, so it's not really a big deal. Now, there's enough of them here that running away becomes far and away the best option. I couldn't interrupt all of those. And of course, there's the matter of the hollow with the great axe to deal with. All at once, that can be a dangerous encounter, especially if you're not paying attention and don't see the great axe wielder until you're a little busy with other things. Looks like he took some damage from something. It's possible that the immolation hollows can actually damage their allies, but I might have actually just winged him with a sword a couple times. They all sort of look alike in this area, since they're all wearing the same outfits. The only thing to really distinguish them is the weapons they use and their size. Either way, we finally found a way into the cathedral proper. I also remember to equip my Way of Blue Covenant signal, because Warrior of Sunlight does nobody any good. Hey, buddy. Usually, that giant is supposed to be kneeling down in a sort of idle position, but for whatever reason, he's just sort of standing up in T-pose. We're introduced to a new kind of enemy here, the slimes. Slimes are extremely annoying for most characters. They take very little damage from everything except fire, so fortunately we are well equipped to deal with them. For characters who don't specialize in pyromancy, I would recommend simply tossing fire bombs at them. It's a great deal faster than just hitting them with a sword, because they take almost no physical damage. Another new enemy type that we just fought are the deacons. Deacons are fairly non-threatening enemies that will toss fireballs at you on occasion and try to hit you with candlesticks. They're snappy dressers though, so... they're really only a problem in large numbers, or when used in conjunction with other enemies as sort of fire support. Thankfully enough, we have found a way back to the cleansing chapel bonfire. Making it a fairly significant waypoint in this exploration throughout the cathedral. There are actually very few different bonfires in this area, especially compared to some other areas in the game. But the way that level is designed, you can actually loop back and get back to that same bonfire multiple times from multiple angles, provided you're thorough. So it's a pretty neat design, and I like it a lot. There's some more evangelists down here and other places in the cathedral, since this is ostensibly where they're coming from. They remain quite dangerous, but the farther along we get in the game, the less noteworthy they become. Still, as is per usual, taking them on in narrow spaces is a very dangerous proposition. This is one of the nasty tricks that slimes like to play on you. They tend to hang out on the ceiling and drop down when you run past. It's not especially dangerous. See, here we go. That's how the giant is supposed to look. And then he gets mad. Hiding in a corner is marginally safe, but the fact of the matter is that you need to get past this guy somehow. And there's goodies to pick up too. So, you just gotta be quick about it. And make a break for the safe zones as you see them. It doesn't help that there's hollows up there firing crossbow bolts at us. The giant can actually take care of some of those hollows for you if he's being careless, much like the curse-rotted greatwood. Lots of large enemies in this game have friendly fire enabled. Now, what a giant is doing here in this cathedral is sort of a question in and of itself. Now, I got distracted by a blow dart, so it's goodbye. It wasn't necessarily evident on screen, but magic damage, despite what you might think, actually does very little to slimes. You really need to use fire and actually hit with it. Combustion is strong, but the range is a little limiting sometimes. See Guidance is a interesting miracle. It lets you see more messages from other players as well as special developer messages. If I knew where any of those were, I would show it off. Maybe later. I'll have to look up where they are. It also has another function. It allows you, upon cast, to see summon signs from other players even if you are not in Ember form. Essentially, this allows you to engage in jolly cooperation to your benefit without necessarily burning an Ember. I'm not really sure why, but this particular evangelist has historically been a real pain in the ass for me. Maybe it's just the environment of where you fight her, but I always end up taking a pretty severe beating from her, if not dying outright. That spiked mace is really nasty. This is also the area where those hollows were sniping at us earlier when we were trying to deal with a giant. I appreciate that sort of congruity in level design. Pay no attention, I'm speedrunning. At any rate, it's time to go onwards and downwards. Judging by the warning signs, this is another mimic, and probably the first one that you'll actually find in the game. The one on the high wall of Lothric is sort of hidden away in an area that you might not think to go because of the angry dragon spewing fire at you. He drops the deep Braille Divine Tome, which Arena might be interested in. But apparently it is now considered a thing profane, so maybe not. That doesn't really seem like her wheelhouse. We'll have to think about it. This was the guy that fell down earlier and is now giving me some issues because he was hiding behind the pews. Up here is yet another new enemy type, and probably the most dangerous one we've seen so far, the Cathedral Knight. Cathedral Knights are huge, beefy, and have a lot of poise. They do a lot of damage per hit, but they also attack very slowly. The ones with the great shields are actually fairly easy to deal with if you know what to do. Simply two-hand your weapon and wail on the shield while they're blocking, and you can stagger them fairly easily. A different variety that we'll encounter a bit later is quite a bit more difficult to deal with. And this room is an Ember, and this fun-looking guy. I believe that these are known as Deep Accursed. They can curse you, hence the name, and they're also just fairly large and intimidating. There are only 2 of these in the entire game, so they're more like mini-bosses. If you do enough damage, you can stagger them and finish them off with a visceral attack. They drop a unique ring, the Aldrich Sapphire, which lets you recover focus points from critical attacks. Could be useful. Critical attacks mean, of course, riposts and backstabs. That is a non-respawning enemy, so we don't have to worry about it anymore if you want to go back into that room for whatever reason. This is another scripted invasion, like Holy Knight Hodrick and Yellowfinger Hazel. This is another finger, Longfinger Kirk. Kirk, the Knight of Thorns, is actually a returning figure. He was in Dark Souls 1 as an invading Black Phantom. Don't ask why I double enchanted my weapon there. It was not intentional. Now, Kirk is a difficult opponent, and he has a gimmick. He will actually damage you simply by rolling into you. He also just has a lot of health and does a lot of damage per swing. But like most NPCs, he can be sort of... I don't think cheese is the right word, but he can be defeated fairly easily simply by being cagey. Attack him a couple times to stagger him, then back off before he has a chance to retaliate. For defeating him, we get his sword and shield. They're both fairly unremarkable, except for the fact that they cause bleed damage. While the shield is actually remarkable in and of that its weapon art is just you hit them with a spiky shield and it hurts. It's sort of underwhelming, but the barbed straight sword is actually pretty okay. Not flashy, but okay. The real reward for beating Kirk comes a little bit later, because you can get his armor. I don't believe we'll be seeing that in this video, because its spawn point is sort of weird. Still, for it to show up at all, you do need to defeat him, so it's a worthwhile endeavor to come down here while in Ember form. The Cathedral Knight is flanked by a thrall, so taking them both on at once sounds like a bad idea. Now, these mace-wielding knights can be dangerous when they use their special maneuvers. This one used Perseverance, which increases his poise to the point where he takes a lot less damage and can basically not be staggered at all while it's active. He can also enchant his mace with a special unique enchantment that leaves balls of exploding light on the floor where he swings it. This can actually be quite devastating if you're not paying attention or you don't know what it does. The delightful statues spewing poison gas will, in fact, poison you, so do be careful of that when going through this area. If you're determined, you can use that to your advantage, but most of the time it's just easier to hit things with sword. Usually. They're not exactly devastating traps, but they are worth paying attention to, because poison is just another thing you really don't have to worry about. This shortcut actually serves dual purposes. One door will take you back to the Cleansing Chapel bonfire. Another will take you up to another area entirely, which is off the beaten path, and a lot of players will never see it to begin with. We'll be exploring that in due time. For now, though, there's a couple more things I want to do in the main cathedral proper before we go there. It'll make sense, eventually. Probably. getting a lot of mileage out of Magic Weapon. I'm quite pleased with that spell. If I two-hand it and use the Magic Weapon, I can actually one-shot these thralls, which is really handy. Just barely, but again, just barely is just good enough. So now we need to take care of these giants who have been antagonizing us. Unfortunately, they are found in these pits of muck, which greatly slow your movement speed. The way to get past that, and the only way as far as I know, is to simply equip the standard dagger and use the weapon art. This will let you quick step through the mire, and is pretty much as fast as running through normally. You can continue to quick step even when your focus point bar is down. I'm good at talking sometimes. So it is essentially a free method of locomotion, though if you're a character like mine that enjoys using things like spells and weapon arts, then it still kind of sucks because you still got to deal with it and not having any FP. Giants are actually extremely toothless if you simply follow the basic strategy of go for the ankles. Wonderful. Rolling is also marginally faster than walking, but it defaults you to the heavy roll. There's a couple of goodies scattered around here, some of which are maybe best left unwondered about. You don't have to take out the giants, but they do drop large Titanite shards, and they give quite a few souls on death, so it's in your best interest to do so. The Saint Bident is a cool weapon, but a useless one. It has some of the lowest attack rating in the game, at least as of this recording. It's a spear type weapon, but it's also kind of cool because it scales off of faith. Not very well, admittedly, but it's a cool idea, I guess. As you can see, like I mentioned earlier, we can simply quick step through the muck without any repercussion, even if we have no FP. It does take stamina, but that's a renewable resource, so don't worry about it. If you really want to get the most out of your FP in these kinds of areas, then you should probably try to explore these mire areas while you have no FP left, then refill, then use your offensive spells, and then go back to exploring, which is more or less what I try to do here. This giant is guarded, I guess, by several slime-type enemies. And, as I mentioned earlier, taking them out with physical attacks would take forever. So I'm going to have to sacrifice a bit of my precious FP pool just to take care of them. This is actually the most dangerous attack those giants have. Simply throwing the goop at you does a lot of damage and is fairly difficult to dodge. There was a slime there. They're actually very hard to see because they're short enough that they get mostly covered up by the sludge. Giants are a little weird. Depending on where you hit them, they either take a lot of damage, a moderate amount of damage, or no damage at all from your ranged attacks. If you hit them like dead on in the face, then you can actually do a lot of damage with like fire orbs and arrows and stuff, but it's very finicky. And you also leave yourself open to simply being counterattacked by the goop fling. As I mentioned earlier, giants are by far the most toothless when you get under their legs. See, one of those attacks did like 37, one of them did about 400, and another did about 100. Very odd. The only thing that giants can really do to you when you're under them is try and stomp you very slowly, or do a sort of wide sweep attack that will almost always miss provided you're next to their feet. If you know what to do and you're not intimidated by their large size, then it's really a trivial matter to get rid of them. There are unfortunately still plenty of slimes in this area, and I am running quite low on focus points, as I find out very nearly to my cost there. By comparison, here's what you have to do to kill them without magic. A new challenger joins the fray. This is a grub man. Grub men are somewhat unthreatening. They're mostly just gross. Slimes are sort of erratic in how they attack and have very strange tells, so they can actually do some damage to you if they're either obscured like they are in the muck, or you're just not used to fighting them. This character hasn't had much use for firebombs yet, but now seems like a good a time as any. It's worth it to explore the giant area, gross as it is, because there's some nice stuff in here. Hail tongues notwithstanding. The Drang armor in particular is quite a nice find. It's a stylish and functional set of light armor that will remind you of a faraway time in a faraway kingdom, though you might not know why. Also, it's got a sweet cape. We're on the home stretch now. Though now we're faced with a fairly challenging configuration of enemies. I'm gonna go ahead and use my hidden blessing here, just so I have some magic power to deal with these guys. It's not doing me any good sitting in my inventory. Now, this guy is a problem. The great sword-wielding Cathedral Knights are menaces. They are almost unstaggerable. They hit extremely hard and have a lot of reach. I sort of chumped on that guy, but please do not think that is emblematic of how all of those fights will go. They are extremely dangerous because of how completely impervious to stagger they are. Ironically enough, the ones with shields actually are more vulnerable to staggering, simply because you can get through the shield with a concerted attack. Be very careful of the Cathedral Knights with great swords. They're not especially common, but they're some of the most dangerous enemies in the game. Trying to be thrifty with my FP at this point, since I'm completely out of ways to recover it. As such, I was trying for backstabs there, but sometimes the detection is a little weird, especially when there's like destructible furniture in the way. As you might remember, we did equip Aldrich's Sapphire, which will give us FP on critical attacks. So sometimes fishing for that kind of thing can be worth your while, even if it's not strictly necessary from a combat standpoint. Now, believe it or not, This set of double doors is important. Why is it important? Well, it's for a really inane reason. It acts as a trigger for certain NPC spawns. We need to open it up to get certain things to happen. Dig board? I'll talk to you in a minute. There's treasure. Not very good treasure, but treasure nonetheless. Alright, buddy, what's going on?
Well, you look reasonably sane. I am a knight of Cathedral. I've managed to track down this cathedral's store of treasure. It's right over there, across that narrow part. Treasure? Always so close, yet so far. I'm in quite a pickle, indeed. Just hold your horses a moment. I know. Treasure is so sorely tempting.
Well, I guess there's another Knight of Caterina walking around in Lothric. I guess. Oh no!
Shame on you, you greedy guts. Thought you could outwit an onion. Well, say hello to the nice giant. He adores visitors. Where's the old giant? What? Where's the bloody giant? Just what have you done? How dare you? Have you no shame? Damn, and damn.
It was no Onion Knight at all, but it was Patches. Patches the trusty, Patches the hyena, Patches the spider, Patches the whatever he is in this game. He has returned once more to kick people into pits. Though I must admit, he's gotten quite a bit more creative. Though this does raise some questions. Questions that will be answered next time. Until then, please be wary of shady knights.